The alien cowboy expected a delicate bride, but an amazingly strong woman stepped off the wagon. The wagon wheel cracked like a rifle shot just as it hit the deepest part of Willow Creek, sending the entire vehicle lurching sideways toward the rushing water with enough force to throw any normal passenger into the rocky stream bed. But Elias Thorne, watching from the creek bank where he had been waiting for over an hour, saw something that made his alien-enhanced senses register shock waves of disbelief through his carefully human disguise. Instead of screaming or clinging helplessly to the wagon seat as he had expected, the woman inside moved with the fluid precision of a trained acrobat. In one seamless motion, she vaulted over the tilting side, landed solidly on the broken wheel, and somehow managed to lift the entire corner of the wagon with her bare hands, while the startled driver scrambled to control his spooked horses. Elias found himself staring at arms that displayed muscles he had never seen on any human female, watching this woman single-handedly prevent what should have been a disaster, with the kind of casual strength that even his own enhanced physiology would have found challenging. When she looked up from her impromptu rescue operation and caught his eye, her grin was neither delicate nor apologetic, but rather the satisfied expression of someone who had just solved a problem through direct action and superior capability. "You must be Elias Thorne," she called out in a voice that carried clearly over the sound of rushing water and nervous horses. "I'm Catherine Steele, your bride-to-be. Hope you don't mind getting your boots wet, because this wagon's going to need some proper lifting if we want to get it out of here in one piece." For 37 years, Elias had been living among humans in the American frontier territories, carefully studying their social customs and biological patterns while maintaining perfect camouflage as a successful ranch owner and respected member of the community. His people had sent him to observe human mating rituals and family structures, to understand the complex emotional bonds that drove their civilization's expansion across hostile terrain. The mail-order bride arrangement had seemed like the perfect opportunity to study human romantic relationships from the inside, while providing him with the domestic partnership that frontier society expected from a man of his apparent age and prosperity. His correspondence with Catherine Steele had led him to expect a typical pioneer woman, hardy enough to survive the journey west, but fundamentally dependent on male protection and guidance. The letters she had written from Ohio had been full of references to her domestic skills, her religious devotion, and her eagerness to provide comfort and support to a hard-working husband. Her photograph had shown a pleasant-faced young woman in conventional dress, hands folded demurely in her lap, in the approved manner of frontier femininity. Nothing in their correspondence had prepared him for the sight of his bride-to-be hoisting a fully loaded wagon with apparent ease. As Elias waded into the creek to help with the rescue operation, his enhanced hearing caught Catherine explaining to the grateful driver how to distribute the weight properly while repositioning the wheel assembly to prevent future breakage. Her knowledge of mechanical systems and structural engineering was far beyond what any human woman of her era should have possessed, and her casual competence in applying that knowledge suggested practical experience that her letters had never mentioned. Working together to extract the wagon from the creek, Elias found himself reassessing everything he thought he knew about human females and their capabilities. Catherine's strength was not just impressive for a woman, it was impressive by any standard, approaching the upper limits of what unenhanced human physiology should have been able to achieve. More importantly, she wielded that strength with the confidence of someone who had never doubted her right to use it. When they finally got the wagon safely onto dry ground, Catherine wiped her hands on her practical traveling dress and extended one to Elias with the straightforward manner of someone conducting business, rather than the demure courtesy he had expected from a prospective bride. Her grip was firm, her calluses spoke of years of hard physical work, and the direct way she met his eyes suggested a personality that had little patience for conventional social pretenses. "Well," she said, surveying the rescued wagon with satisfaction, "that's one way to make a first impression. I hope you weren't expecting one of those delicate flowers who need smelling salts every time something interesting happens, because I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed on that count." Elias found himself struggling to reconcile this confident, capable woman with the demure correspondent who had accepted his marriage proposal with such conventional feminine gratitude. His alien senses detected none of the electromagnetic patterns associated with deception or concealed identity, but clearly there were aspects of Catherine Steele that her letters had not revealed. As they rode together toward his ranch, Catherine proved to be a fascinating conversationalist whose knowledge extended far beyond the domestic arts she had emphasized in her correspondence. She asked intelligent questions about his livestock breeding programs, offered insightful comments about the agricultural challenges of the territory, and demonstrated an understanding of frontier economics that suggested education and experience well beyond the usual for women of her background. More puzzling still, her physical capabilities seemed to extend beyond mere strength. When their horses were startled by a rattlesnake, Catherine's reaction time was faster than any unenhanced human should have possessed, and her control of her mount showed the kind of intuitive understanding that usually required years of training. She handled the incident with casual competence, then continued their conversation as if nothing unusual had occurred. Elias began to suspect that he was not the only one in their developing relationship who was concealing important truths about his nature and origins. But unlike his own deception, which was based on necessity and mission requirements, Catherine's apparent misrepresentation seemed more complex and intriguing. She was clearly not the conventional frontier bride he had expected, but what she actually was remained mysterious. The mystery deepened when they arrived at his ranch, and Catherine's reaction to the property revealed knowledge that no Ohio farm girl should have possessed. She immediately identified the most advanced aspects of his operation, asking specific questions about techniques and equipment that demonstrated understanding of agricultural innovations that existed nowhere else in the territory. Elias had spent years carefully introducing improvements to his ranch that were decades ahead of normal human technology, using his advanced knowledge to develop methods that appeared to be the result of exceptional skill and innovation rather than alien science. Catherine not only recognized these improvements but seemed to understand the principles behind them in ways that suggested exposure to similar advanced techniques. That evening, as they sat on the porch of his ranch house discussing the practical arrangements of their impending marriage, Elias found himself studying his bride-to-be with senses honed by decades of observation and analysis. Catherine Steele was demonstrably not what she had claimed to be in her letters, but determining her true nature would require careful investigation that might reveal his own secrets in the process. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of horses approaching at speed, and Elias's enhanced hearing immediately identified the riders as members of the Dalton Gang, notorious outlaws who had been terrorizing the territory for months. There were 6 of them, armed and dangerous, riding toward the ranch with the purposeful intensity that meant trouble was about to arrive, whether anyone wanted it or not. Catherine's reaction to the approaching threat was immediate and revealing. She rose from her chair with fluid grace, assessed the tactical situation with a glance, and made observations about defensive positions and sightlines that demonstrated military-level strategic thinking. When Elias suggested that she might want to hide inside while he dealt with the outlaws, her response was a laugh that held no trace of fear. "Hide?" she said, moving toward the house with purposeful strides. "I don't think so, but I will need to get something from my luggage that might come in handy if those gentlemen are planning to cause trouble." What she retrieved from her carefully packed trunk was unlike any weapon Elias had ever seen in human hands. It appeared to be a rifle, but its design incorporated principles that wouldn't be discovered by human science for another 50 years. When Catherine handled it, her familiarity with its operation was absolute, suggesting training and experience that no frontier woman should have possessed. The confrontation that followed challenged every assumption Elias had developed about human capabilities and gender roles during his decades of observation. The Dalton Gang had chosen his ranch as a target because they believed a successful rancher and his new bride would be easy prey, isolated, wealthy, and unlikely to offer effective resistance. They had not anticipated facing Catherine Steele in combat mode. Her weapon fired with impossible accuracy at ranges that should have been beyond any firearm of the era, and her tactical awareness allowed her to coordinate with Elias in ways that suggested training in advanced military techniques. More importantly, she showed no hesitation about using lethal force against threats, dispatching the outlaws with professional efficiency that left no doubt about her combat experience. When the shooting stopped, and 6 of the territory's most wanted criminals lay dead or dying around the ranch house, Catherine calmly began field stripping her weapon for cleaning with the practiced movements of someone for whom such maintenance was routine. Her casual attitude toward the violence they had just participated in was so far removed from normal human female behavior that Elias found himself questioning everything he thought he understood about his bride. "Well," Catherine said, noticing his stare, "I suppose that's another conversation we need to have, isn't it? You've been wondering why I'm not quite what my letter suggested, and I've been wondering the same thing about you. Maybe it's time we both started being a little more honest about who we really are. What followed was perhaps the most extraordinary mutual revelation in the history of interspecies relationships. Catherine, it turned out, was not Catherine Steele from Ohio, just as Elias was not entirely the human rancher he appeared to be. Her true identity was Commander Catherine Seven of the Terran Defense Corps, a military organization that existed 50 years in the future and had sent her back in time to investigate reports of alien activity in the late 19th century American West. The advanced strength, reflexes, and combat skills that had so surprised Elias were the result of genetic and cybernetic enhancements that represented the pinnacle of 20th century human military technology. She had been born in 1952, trained from childhood as a temporal operative, and sent back to 1887 with orders to locate and assess the alien presence that future intelligence had detected in the territory. Her mail-order bride persona had been carefully constructed to provide cover for her investigation, and her correspondence with Elias had been part of a plan to get close to the most likely candidate for alien infiltration. What she had not expected was to find herself genuinely attracted to the man she was supposed to be investigating, or to discover that he possessed qualities that went far beyond mere alien intelligence. Elias, for his part, revealed his true nature as a deep-cover operative of the Galactic Observation Corps, sent to study human civilization during one of its most dynamic periods of expansion and development. His people had been monitoring Earth for millennia, but the rapid changes of the 19th century had required more intensive study than distant observation could provide. The mutual admissions created a situation unprecedented in the experience of either of their organizations. A deep-cover alien operative and a time-traveling human soldier, both operating under false identities, who had accidentally become engaged to each other while pursuing their respective missions. But even more significant than their professional complications was the personal connection that had developed between them during their brief acquaintance. Despite the deceptions that had brought them together, both found themselves genuinely attracted to the qualities they had discovered in each other: intelligence, competence, courage, and the ability to adapt to extraordinary circumstances with humor and grace. Their wedding, held 2 weeks later in the small church that served the scattered ranching community, was attended by neighbors who had no idea that they were witnessing the union of beings from different species and different centuries. The ceremony itself was conducted according to conventional frontier customs, but the private vows that Catherine and Elias exchanged afterward acknowledged the unique nature of their partnership. They promised to honor each other's missions while building a life together that satisfied both their professional obligations and their personal desires. Catherine would continue her investigation of temporal anomalies while helping to manage the ranch, and Elias would pursue his anthropological studies while providing her with the support and partnership she needed to operate effectively in the 19th century. The months that followed proved that cooperation between advanced beings from different times and species could create possibilities that neither could have achieved alone. Catherine's future knowledge combined with Elias's alien technology to solve problems and prevent disasters throughout the territory. While their partnership provided both of them with insights into their respective civilizations that formal study could never have yielded, their relationship also demonstrated that strength came in many forms, and that the most successful partnerships were built on complementary capabilities rather than traditional role assignments. Catherine's physical power and combat skills balanced Elias's technological advantages and analytical abilities, creating a team that was more effective than either could have been individually. More importantly, their marriage became a model for the kind of interspecies and intertemporal cooperation that would eventually allow humanity to take its place in the galactic community. The lessons they learned about trust, communication, and mutual respect, despite fundamental differences in origin and nature, would influence diplomatic protocols for generations to come. Years later, as they sat together watching the sunset paint the Wyoming sky in shades of gold and crimson, Catherine and Elias often reflected on the expectations they had brought to their first meeting, and how completely those expectations had been overturned. The delicate bride that Elias had expected had proven to be anything but delicate, while the simple rancher that Catherine had come to investigate had revealed depths of complexity that challenged her understanding of both alien intelligence and human potential. Their love story had begun with mutual deception, but had evolved into something based on complete honesty and acceptance of each other's true natures. The strength that had first surprised Elias about Catherine had become one of the qualities he treasured most. while the wisdom and compassion he had shown in accepting her unusual background had proven to Catherine that love could indeed transcend the boundaries of time and species. The wagon that had nearly crashed in Willow Creek on the day of their first meeting had been repaired and now served as a symbol of their relationship, something that had seemed headed for disaster, but had been saved by unexpected strength, mutual cooperation, and the willingness to work together despite coming from completely different backgrounds. Their story became legend among those few individuals who learned fragments of the truth, told as an example of how the most unlikely partnerships could succeed when built on respect for each other's capabilities and acceptance of differences as sources of strength rather than division. The alien cowboy who had expected a delicate bride had found instead a partner whose amazing strength had completed and enhanced his own, creating a union that enriched both their lives and advanced the cause of understanding between all conscious beings who chose love over fear in their encounters with the unknown. In the end, the greatest strength that Catherine had brought to their marriage was not physical but emotional. The courage to be herself despite social expectations, the wisdom to recognize worth in others regardless of their origins, and the determination to build something lasting with whoever proved worthy of her trust and affection. These qualities, combined with Elias's own capacity for growth and adaptation, had created a partnership that transcended every boundary except the willingness to see past surface differences to the deeper truths that connected all beings capable of love, loyalty, and hope for a shared future.